when one hurts, we all hurt. Not only as females, but also as human beings. If half of us is hurting, then it impacts the
Why is
whole.
heart disease a major issue in women? Stress, anxiety, and depression. Why? Because you're internalizing these abnormal experiences that are not meant to continue
to be a healthier society. We need to make sure that men are also getting this information. Like, we have to give this information to men. You know, they go through trauma as well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pink Room XP. XP stands for Exposed, Exposure, and welcome, Shonda. Welcome, Teresa. Today, we want to talk about when women hurt and the generational trauma that comes with women being hurt. We're going to start by reminding everyone that we actually celebrated an anniversary for those young women who were kidnapped about 10 years ago from the Igbo tribe. And we want to share that video with you.
Did you know that 150 million girls are raped every year? Or that 137 women are killed by a member of their family every day? And that globally, adult women account for nearly half of all trafficking victims. Domestic violence affects 35% of all women. Fewer than 40% who experience violence will ever seek help. Women make up half of the world. When we hurt one of them, we hurt one of us.
So this is a powerful, what Rabida is trying to do in this video is actually call attention to the fact that so many women and girls are hurt daily. And when you hurt one woman, you really hurt all of us, right? And her statistics that she shares in that video. Remember, in 2014, 276 Igbo girls were kidnapped. It shook the world, but since then, not a lot has been talked about. When we talk about women being daily abused by family members, people that they know, raped, physical abuse, she's using this parody as this is the makeup tutorial that you need. When you hurt one woman, you hurt all of us. So, Sean and Teresa, this concept of when you hurt one woman, you hurt all of us. What are your thoughts on that? Because people might feel like that's kind of dramatic. How if I hurt a woman if a woman in Nigeria is hurting because she was kidnapped and raped, and how is that hurting other women in the world?
I would like to start out by saying that the effect of these type of atrocities definitely hurt not just women, but we're talking about women because it's hurting communities. But the way it's hurting women and girls in many different places are these same experiences are taking place, and they're just not probably in this instance. It was so outstanding in the media. But there are a lot of things that are happening like this throughout the world to girls, and it hurts us wherever we are in the world, because once you hurt us, it just affects the families, it affects communities, it affects the psychological abilities sometimes of these girls and women to function thereafter without appropriate help. So it could be a long-term experience and trauma that takes healing for a long time.
I agree with you, Shonda. And my take on your question, Norca, is we're social beings and we need each other. And there are so many different levels that we could actually explore our connectiveness spiritually. Spiritually, we're all connected. We are all, whether you consider yourself from whatever faith that you come from, there's some level of connectedness, some level of understanding of our connectedness on a spiritual level. And there's this one scripture text that says, if one part of the body hurts, everybody hurts. And I see that as, for me, as an understanding, if another human being is hurting and I do not consider that of importance, then what I'm putting out is, I'm not putting out empathy. I'm not putting out connection. And all that does is really continue this cycle of violence and, and hurt that all of us will eventually have to deal with. Maybe many people would say, it has nothing to do with me because it's all the way across the world. Everything has to do with us. We should be concerned. I mean, this is one planet. And that's on a physical level, right? I mean, I can't just get on a spaceship and go to another planet and live my life there and forget about what's happening here. And I mean, this world has become, physically such a small place. In seconds, there's missiles that can be launched, anywhere in the world, and we will all be affected by it. So we should care. We should care what happens halfway, across the world, because, in some way, shape, or form, governments that are not taking care of protecting their citizens, especially half of their citizens, they will eventually, have to deal with so many things, right? I mean, we talk about so many political issues like migration and all of this. And I mean, most people who migrate, it's because they need to find a safe haven, a space where they can actually live their lives. So, one of the things that's in everybody's best interest is that everybody can actually live in the space that they, are living right now. I think about everything that's going on in the world right now, and I put myself in their place. What if one day I have to wake up to no home and I have to leave? So we should understand that we are connected. That what happens to people in other places in the world will eventually, have an effect on our lives in some way, shape, or form. And we should care that they are doing well, that they're not being, violated, that they're not being, assassinated at the hands, of other people. So, all of this affects us, and that's my perspective.
It goes back to the whole idea that both of you touched on, that we need to remember that women make up half the world. And this was kind of like in the video, the silent video clip from Rahinova, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if we are making up half the world, why would you feel that it's okay that the half of us is expendable? We can get rid of them. Whatever happens to them really doesn't matter. It's just part of their condition because of their gender, right? And this is what is happening with women, not only across the world, but even here, right? Yeah. Whatever happens is, okay, well, she's a woman, and that is kind of like expected, right? The numbers of abuse on women, rape, violence, the fact that women are forced to be silent around these matters shows to me that we're really not too concerned about the half of us, right? And the safety and the protection of the half of us, right? So let's dig deeper into how that half of us suffer, and how that generational trauma, and Teresa talked a little bit about it when we talk about migration, when we talk about all the other things that are happening in this world, how that generational trauma in the end hurts the whole of us, not only the half of us. So let's talk a little bit about the generational trauma on women, and when they carry this load, this baggage, what it does to the whole of us as a world, as a society.
Well, if it's definitely not addressed and considered to be a serious issue, I believe that you pass that on. People want to say it's not true through blood and all of these things, but I believe it becomes a part of you, and you pass it along generation after generation. And sometimes you almost begin to believe, not sometimes, some people do believe that that's the role and that's what women should experience. And you pass that on, sometimes silently, to your daughters, your nieces, or the girls that you're surrounded with or you come into contact with. And it just becomes this cycle, this dangerous cycle that's just not addressed appropriately.
So stop there, right there, Sean. And this is an important part that we often don't like to contend with. I may carry my my experience and my past of violence silently and never tell anyone. And I often hear women say, "Huh, if I were to tell you what I've been through," right?
Mm-hmm.
What we don't know is that you're not saying is not saving those around you from
Mm-hmm.
experiencing your trauma, because you're functioning within the confines of that trauma. So even if you're silent and you do not get help, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting others. So it's a very important thing, because we feel like if we're quiet, it's going to be okay. It's going to in some way slip away, wash
Disappear.
away, and we can pretend that we're okay. But it carries. This is generational trauma. It carries.
Oh, absolutely.
It has effects. Go
Think
ahead.
Excuse me.
about this. Think about what it also does when you're talking about you passing it on. But like you said, you're hurting yourself not only emotionally, psychologically, but physically. If you look at why is heart disease a major issue in women? Stress, anxiety, and depression. Why? Because you're internalizing these abnormal experiences that are not meant to continue to be passed along. So when you're physically, mentally, and spiritually hurt, sometimes you unknowingly, or like I said, silently, you're passing this along. So it affects almost every aspect of a woman's life. Finances, how you live financially, how you function, what communities you're in. It affects so many aspects when women are hurting wherever, because it just continues. It's just like a cesspool. And I know I've used that term a lot, but it's just like a cesspool that we just keep feeding from.
Hmm.
Wow.
Completely agree. And if I can interject here, I want to say that what we do when we do not address, that generational trauma, all that, you can be silent all you want, like you can like not say anything. However, you know, you're not only going to manifest your trauma in your attitude towards other people, because the reality is that when you are a hurt individual, and if you don't resolve that hurt, you will be hurting other people in some way, shape, or form. Some level, you're going to hurt other people. There's just no way around that. Nobody can go around saying, oh, I went through so much trauma, but I didn't pass it out to my kids, if they haven't done the work. Because when you are somebody who has gone through, that generational trauma, what happens is, you pass on your fears to your generation. You will eventually affect them in some way, shape, or form. So there's really no way around it but to face it. And of course, that's the most difficult part. But that's why we have to talk about it. That's why it's important that we, get help. But I think as a society, we have to talk about it because it's there. It's there. It's, people want to think that we can just turn the other way and not even discuss it. But it's palpable in our, when people interact with us, it'll be there. It's going to affect our next generations.
That's right.
Unless we say, hey, you know what, we have to discuss how women have been treated, how many women are being violated, how many women are being killed. This is happening. And one of the things that I have been keeping an eye on recently in Mexico, Mexico is unfortunately a state of genocide, against women.
Honduras is the other one.
Who is?
Honduras.
Yes. And there's one state, it's called Guanajuato, where the level of assassinations, specifically towards women, is, it's crazy, how high it is. What I wanted to point out is the fact that when that society does not value women, women are going to be victims of violence. And that's what's happening right now. And, we have two women running for president in Mexico. There have been many women candidates that have been assassinated in that state of Guanajuato. And so it's a very dangerous place for women, and all you have to do is just open your eyes. So whoever says that, women have it better, I'm not saying that we are not better than our mothers. I know we are, right? I'm sitting here in a leadership position that would have been accessible to me 50 years ago. I understand that. There is progress. However, every step that we move forward as women, unfortunately, has not been a step that we can say it's been a blessing to all women. We can't say that. It hasn't benefited all women.
Right. You said something very striking here. When societies do not take care of women are going to suffer violence. I'm paraphrasing. And this is such a deep statement, because when women are not valued in a society, let's go smaller, let's go to a culture, let's go smaller, let's go to a denomination, let's go smaller, let's go to a workplace, in a family, there's going to be violence because they're seen as expendable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do anything to them, they can be, and it doesn't really matter. That's such an important concept that you've shared there. But I also want to go back to what both of you were talking about doing the work, right? And how important it is to do the work, as you said. And that is the work of making sure that I deal with those monsters, I deal with those past things that are in me, and I think that if I'm silent, it's going to go away. The damage that we have done to women, and not only to women, also men, culturally, religiously, by acting as if therapy is not needed. Let's explore that a little bit. Tell people, go home and pray about it.
Oh, mercy.
All right? And it's going to go away. It does not, because they have not done the work of getting rid and dealing with their feelings and all the damage that it has created in their lives. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of getting help, of getting therapy.
The work it's self-care. To do that type of work is to maintain you, which when you maintain you also, when you're taking care of you, you begin to be able to better care for others. So doing that work really gets you the opportunity to look in, and it's like unpack those layers of things that you were forced to learn or conditioned to learn, and to realize that those things are fallacies, that they're man-made beliefs about how women and girls should be treated throughout this world and not valued and respected. And it helps you understand that you're equally as valuable, right? When you do the work, when you do the therapy, you begin to understand who you are meant to be, and that you had no control over what those other individuals did, but what they did does not define you. Now you have to unlearn, or now you have to begin to learn that you're better, that you're greater than that, and that not only that healing is going to help you progress, to a different stage in your life, a life that maybe you were held back 10 years ago emotionally or psychologically because of that trauma, that violence, that damage, that disrespect, that being devalued, etc. So doing that work, it's self-care and it's self-maintenance. It helps you maintain you.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Shonda. And if I may add to that, I think one of the things that at least I can share that I've learned on personally from doing the work is understanding that the trauma that I received at hands of other people, trauma comes from, this is my, at least my understanding, right? Other people wanting to control and dominate you and make you do what they want you to do for their own benefit, for their own, pleasure, whatever it is, right? trauma comes from you not being in control, you not being respected, your individuality not being respected. So what happens is when that is taken from you, right? When your self-control, when your safety and all that's taken from you, then you live in a place of fear, right? So as you grow, you will continue to live in a place of fear because you've experienced having being controlled by somebody else, having been manipulated by somebody else. So you live in a it's a constant state of fear, and unless you face those fears, which are very difficult to face, very difficult to work through, and rewire your brain to understand that, especially as adult women. And I think because this is when most of the work, unfortunately, is getting done. Once we've left the childhood and our teenage years, where we're still, unfortunately, very vulnerable. Once we become adult women, we're able to begin to understand what happened to us, right? And I think one of the biggest understandings that I've come into is to understand that I can do something with that fear. I can stop my brain from spiraling into a behavior that's going to be detrimental to my health and to all of the people that surround me. So when you say, doing the work, Shonda, I just want to say it is work. It's not easy. If you want to be a healthy human being that's not scared of, other people or circumstances that might come up because of the trauma that you experienced, in childhood, then there is a work to do. There's practices that have to be put in place, because you have to rewire your brain to understand that you can not be afraid. So there's so much there, but to me, that's been the biggest takeaway. And I'm still doing the work. I have moments where it's very difficult to not follow, that pattern of being scared, of letting myself, be taken by the anxiety of losing control. But the support that I've had through, years of therapy, they're helping, right? I still need to put that into practice. One of the last techniques that I was given was, when I start having a moment of anxiety where I feel that I'm in danger, as I did when I was a child, I need to attach my thoughts to something that brings me peace. And it's been it's been a process where I have to practice that, and I have to practice that, so I can come back and assure my body that I'm safe and that I'm okay, that I'm not in that situation where I was as a child, right? That I'm here, I'm an adult, I'm a grown woman, and I can ask for help if I need it. I don't have to be quiet. But it takes a while and a lot of effort to really say, okay, I want to do the work, and I want to be able to control that, because living in fear is the easiest thing. Most of us, live like that our entire lives, and because facing the pain of what we went through is not easy. It's not, so anyway, just wanted to share that.
Theresa, I want to thank you, because you're always speaking to the importance of us doing the work, right? And you share your own experience and how doing the work has led you. And we have done the work in some way or the other, but you really speak to the core of why this is necessary and why we need to do that. And I applaud you for that, because oftentimes we tell people go get the help, but we don't tell them what the help will do for them and why it's important for them to get the help. So I thank you for that. There's just one thing that I thought as you both were talking, and I thought about the fact that silence is really violence.
Yeah.
We do more violence to ourselves and those around us because we cannot understand. We say, oh, it's personality. It's not personality. There's pain there, right? And we're trying to stem the wave of the pain. Uh, that violence, that silence is creating violence within us. And in many ways, it is manifested on the outside. So that's why the criticality, getting the help and doing the work. So let's do damage control. How do we help with this issue of women who are being hurt and the generational trauma? What are some recommendations that we can give to be able to control, to kind of put some level of a blockage so that we can break those cycles or create those cycles?
I think to begin with, we have to really be intentional about speaking to all the women and men that are around us. I think that we focus, especially because we are in an organization that supports women and helps to empower them, right? One of the things that I've learned in education is, I focused a lot on girls in the past, and then I had some young men kind of feel that I was kind of pushing them aside in this process. And I understand that if we're all going to be a healthier society, we need to make sure that men are also getting this information. Like, we have to give this information to men. They go through trauma as well. And I think one of the biggest issues is all of these traumatic experiences is exactly that. We're not talking about it. And we need to give, in my case, this is what I've made it a point to do, is to give anybody who I can share this with, my family to begin with, my colleagues, the students that I support, is to give them an emotional vocabulary. We need to start basic and say, you can actually right up here. I have a little a frame that has, it's a iMessage script where it says, I feel this way because of what you did, and it made me, and this is what I think, right? It goes through these different steps of expressing how we're feeling. And I think that when we can teach our generations, I know might be able to be halfway across the world, but if I teach anybody who is near me, one of the things that I'm doing, that I have this the kind of like a campaign going on. Every time I hear a woman or just anybody say I'm sorry, without it being because you hurt them physically or emotionally, I say, don't apologize.
Right.
And I actually was with a server. I was eating somewhere, and they apologized because they were taking a long time. And I said, you know what? I said, you don't have to apologize because you haven't offended me or you haven't hurt me. But if you tell me, thank you for your patience, that, you're expressing your concern, but you're not putting yourself in a position of apologizing, because I think that is one of the biggest things that we are ingrained in, right? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Why are you sorry?
Yeah, women have been conditioned to always ask for
apologize,
right?
Yeah.
And if you notice,
and to also, if you cry, apologize for crying.
Yeah, I'm so sorry because and instead of saying thank you for your understanding,
right?
Thank you for cooperating with me. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time, right? Or I appreciate, your whatever it is that we can actually change that. And so I have been, in that process of every individual, including, but mainly women. When I hear women apologize, I'm like, when somebody, says, "Oh, I'm so sorry," I'm like, why? Did you offend me? Did you hurt me?
Yes.
No. Right. Then why are you apologizing?
Right.
But and to me, that is empowering. And so when I can help somebody change the way they speak, or help them use words to really embrace, I think, an empowered state, that I pray will be a blessing to them, and to help them speak out, to not think that they have to kowtow to anybody, because I'm not saying that we shouldn't be aware of the needs and what our society or people around us need from us, because we are all connected and we all support each other. But I think that one of my personal faith dictates the following. I believe that God's intention for humanity is for that individual to be free, to be free,
That's
to
right.
be free, to be free.
That's right.
And if that, is not what I'm living in my life, then I'm not living my faith. That's my
Your
take
damage
on that.
control. Yeah, your damage control.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Teresa.
I was thinking too, when you go, just to go back to that part about apology, when you see a lot of women who do that, and it's almost as if you're begging someone to forgive you for being a burden,
Wow. Yeah,
right? That's how I look at it. When we're
Yeah.
constantly apologizing, it's almost as if to say, sorry that I'm burdening you and I'm a burden to this world, especially as a woman. So I've worked around some young women, and if they come to ask a question or to do something, sorry, Shonda, what are you sorry
Yeah.
for?
What? Yeah. Yeah.
And then I
Exactly.
just let them process that for a minute, which takes me into how do we damage control a lot of this trauma with. We have to start out by being a good listener. And I say that because sometimes people are trying to tell you things, but because we're so caught up in the world and moving and keeping up with this rat race, that we're really not. It, we hear noise, but we're not listening to the content of that noise, if I should say, right? So we
Right.
need to learn to be a good listener, I think, for people who have been traumatized. And try not to judge people when they're sharing their experiences, right? Because we have a tendency, well, why didn't you? And you should, and you could.
right.
Try not to judge people and help people recognize that they do have boundaries,
And they have
right?
a right to their boundaries.
They have a right to the boundaries that they do have, absolutely. And those are a few ways that I think that you can do damage control, and sometimes people don't even realize that they do have those boundaries, and how do they exercise setting limits.
Right.
So sometimes you have to help people, especially women, girls, learn to say no. It's so many of us in the world who still don't know how to say no, and to help support women to say it's okay to say no. You have a right to say no. You can change your mind. You don't have to please and be a people pleaser all the time. And it can be intense. It can be intense, but it doesn't have to be extremely assertive or aggressive, right? It can just be intense in the type of help that you give them and help them to learn that, this is what I can do to help minimize this trauma, and find things that will help them exercise, eating properly, breathing exercises. A lot of these things will help, damage control to this trauma. For instance, we were talking about these girls 10 years ago. Can you imagine what some are released, some are still being released, some are not released? Can you imagine what's happening to them physically? So
Yeah.
how do you manage all of that and giving them tools and support? It's going to be key.
Yeah. Beautiful ladies. I think that for me, the damage control has to be that we need to, that interconnectedness that you guys spoke about before, right? That when one hurts, we all hurt. Not only as females, but also as human beings. If half of us is hurting, then it impacts the whole. So if women are almost 50% and maybe getting larger numbers, and we see that in the workplace, we see that in church, we see that in, women are large numbers. If the women in your community, group, church, workplace are hurting, please know that you are hurting too, because it impacts the way they function with you, right? So what impacts one impacts the other. So the half impacts the whole. I think that we need to be more intentional about making sure, whether they're across the world, whether they're here in my little niche, whether they're in my community, if they are hurting, it impacts me. That's the connectedness of humanity that we often forget and we need to remember. remember. We want to thank all of you for joining us today again. And we invite you to join us again next week when we'll be discussing another topic. Thank you so much for joining us on The Pink Room.
Thank you.